Hello, it's very good to be here and be in New York under a different context. For the last 3 to 4 years, I've been coming to New York, talking with different companies around how they're working on and improving the acceleration, the innovation within their companies, and talking about the communities of open source technologies that myself and my teams have been associated with. So we believe in our organization that the change over the last 6, 7 years to moving infrastructure software to be open source, to have a community associated with that, and have a community solve the problems. When we were starting the OpenStack community 6 years ago, we didn't know that it could be as large as it is. And when we thought about all the different companies that have technology, all the companies that have problems they're trying to solve, we realized that the best way to be able to solve problems is in the open, in a collaborative sense, and to debate, to design, to iterate rapidly, to be able to create the kind of software and the kind of solutions that would enable people to solve the kind of problems that we could see directly in our eyes, but also to build a platform for accelerating innovation. And one of the things that's been very exciting for me and my teams has been the other large-scale kind of ecosystems that are coming up. That we're participating in these too: Cloud Foundry, Docker, of course, Linux, and many others. But these are communities of people solving problems both inside the corporations, inside the vendor companies, and then individuals with a technical itch to scratch, as we say. It was really good to see some of the growth from the Walmart team talking about the project and how OpenStack has changed. And I'd like to reflect a little bit about what I see here over the last year, and it's a continuation of a trend. You can see the growth curves you saw. The biggest thing that I'm seeing when I talk with customers, and I'm out here all week talking to customers, is that it's starting to become increasingly mainstream. We have a survey in the OpenStack community which talks about anybody who can sign up for the survey and say, well, how are you using the system? Are you prototyping it? Are you using it in your labs? Are you using it kind of in full-scale production deployments, things like that? And when we looked at the surveys over the last couple of years, the numbers for people in full deployment was kind of right around 16% or so. The shift this last year has been, it's kind of hit that S curve, where people within 1 year moved from a majority in a smaller lab environment to a majority of the people having it in large-scale production, whether it's someone like Walmart or other companies. We'll talk some about those. But part of that mainstreaming has been, over the last couple of years, we've gotten more and more people using it. They've given us feedback, and I always believe that feedback is a gift. And it's a gift of, wow, yeah, I'd like it to do this, but what about these security concerns? Or what about these virtualization concerns? And so as we've gotten the feedback, we've incorporated that very significantly over the last 3 releases, the last 18 months. And just to highlight a few of the kinds of things we see, it's been very positively surprising that the telecom industry has really jumped in and realized that as they want to modernize the telco infrastructure, and this ranges from everything from cable companies to mobile operators to landline, they want to build a modern, agile infrastructure underneath not their IT, but underneath their provisioning of the mobile and digital and cable services that they have. So they're in the process of that digitalization, and we call that NFV. And that has stretched the OpenStack platform in ways that we didn't expect 2 years ago. High performance, low latency hypervisor management, live migration of workloads across different clusters. Things like that have driven and have accelerated our ability to then handle many classic workloads that need that kind of strong virtualization environment. And in doing that, it's made it very easy for us to work kind of in the pets and cattle model, where we now have not just the ability to do cloud native workloads, but manage more classic virtualization. Kind of once we've started getting some of that, people are saying, well, that's great, now help me migrate my apps. Help me I need the kind of services that I come to expect. I need load balancer services, firewall services, the L4 through L networking stack. I need all of that to be accessible and easy to accommodate within my infrastructure. And then, not lastly, but over here to the left, to the financial, government, and healthcare and defense, we're now seeing really interesting adoption across all of those sectors, which have obviously very large-scale deployment needs, very high reliability, and in many of the applications, they're making the discussion, like we had Mode 1, 1, 2 with Gartner. They are clearly systems of record and systems of capability in our society, but we really need, but their strong desire to move these into an agile manner. So just a couple of highlights. We're seeing, we have our own distribution, and we have OpenStack built into many of our products, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what we're seeing is really strong adoption across a wide set of companies, a set of industries, whether it's companies that are service providers, whether it's media and entertainment companies, government, banking, finance, pharmaceutical. People are trying to build an agile infrastructure that allows them to support the kind of innovation. And one of the things that I say is, like, the goal here is no meetings with IT. And let me make a distinction. There's people who are helping provide the infrastructure, then there's a line of business developers. Sometimes they call themselves IT, sometimes they call themselves something different. But I used to be one of those. What I wanted is instant access through an API to anything I could normally expect, which means no meetings with somebody who says whether I can or can't get my thing. There is no, it's just, I want it, I use it, I've got some budget, some quota, some system, and I'm gonna keep going, which means that myself and my team can go off and build something in an afternoon without asking for permission. That's really one of the things that drives kind of a Silicon Valley oriented, which is where I come from, kind of let's go try something out and don't have to worry about any buffers, it's gonna cost us a couple of servers and they're being used for something else. Well, I just need fractions of servers. So when we look at kind of what customers are telling us, and we see kind of various different numbers, but a lot of the people I'm talking to have about 10,000 apps inside their estate. Some people will say as low as 2,000 or 3,000. I've had people say 30,000, but 10,000 seems to cover a good set. And out of that, we spend a lot of time trying to help them discuss, understand, and map out what are good routes for these applications to transition to when we think about them in a full digital enterprise. And this is kind of how it lays out, and the numbers are not super exact, but about a third of them, 30% or so, retired or replaced with SaaS applications. There's equivalents out there that didn't used to be out there. There's ways to get this work done in a very much of a consume manner. Have somebody else do that for you, kind of go and have fun. You know, about 10% of them, they're not going to change. People may not have the source code. People maybe are very nervous to rebuild these even. So it's like, I just want them to sit there. If you can make them cheaper, that's great, but look, I can't mess them up. In the middle is where we see a sweet spot, kind of a mix where the apps are under evolution. They are adapting and evolving to the business practices or to the way your business is changing. And they want the agility of the cloud. And this ranges from moving it into a continuous integration, possibly continuous delivery lifecycle, embedding that with many people are talking about a shift to DevOps. And it's not about the tools. It is about a culture of highly reliable, highly adaptive software where all the needs of the app as it's running are taken into consideration. Not just the functionality that somebody wants, but how is it going to operate? How is it going to scale? How is it going to flex under certain circumstances? And that combined set of concerns is really the magic behind DevOps in our world. And then off to the other side, we see somewhere between 10 and 20% of people their apps are well suited towards a move to private clouds. So as we kind of work with customers, we see people starting to sort these out, and these are kind of the normal places, and the ratios may change by company. They'll change over time, but that ability to kind of make sense of your estate, I think, is very interesting. And when we talk to folks, what they're looking for is a set of common services, whether it's, of course, provisioning of all types of systems, load balancers, databases, firewalls, of course, different forms of compute, different forms of storage or data repositories. Security and compliance has to work. And now it works slightly differently because when you're spinning things up and down so continuously, you have to have protocols in place that allow you to do that and still have ways to have audit trails and logging so that when somebody comes and looks and they say, we're now going to audit you, and this happens for some of your businesses every week or every month because there's so many governmental controls, you need to be able to walk them through how things work here. That needs to be blended into the overall infrastructure. And then application patching management, how do you deal with change within your system? So just maybe a high-level conceptual picture of kind of how we at HPE look at kind of the overall approach where we meet our customers. Kind of the green areas are where we, kind of in the cloud area where we work a lot. We work in hybrid management. We help people understand their estate, and whether that estate is more traditional virtualization or cloud native orchestration where people are building and destroying thousands of containers a day, have software and practices that work in that area. And then in the core, we kind of meet people where they are in a lot of ways. Large scale companies have a set of infrastructure provisioning systems where they're ranging across the stack, as you can see, from VMware, OpenStack, more emerging systems like Mesos and Docker or Azure Stack. Our goal is to work with people where they are and help them get better utilization, better control, better agility and innovation into those, and then connecting up to the large scale public cloud systems. The shift that I mentioned earlier about how we got to the place where we're seeing the kind of mainstream adoption, these are just a few of the things that we've been working on here in the last year or so. I just want to highlight a few of them for you. Really making sure that when you have this agile infrastructure that you can operate it, that you can maintain it with high availability for the control plane in multiple regions, that you can migrate virtual machines and have that information transition seamlessly. Doing rolling upgrades. One of the good parts about OpenStack is we've got a very regular 6-month cadence of releases. What that means is you're going to get tremendous number of bug fixes, tremendous number of enhancements, and a number of new features every 6 months. And it's typically very good to be on one of the last 2 versions. Just everything is better. Met some customers that are on stuff 5 versions old. And they're like, I just can't get off of it because it's a very difficult process. So working in the community and then working in a number of us in the vendor space, we've built it easier and easier to do upgrade processes so that it's more of a normal process and it's easy to stay current and get the most recent stuff. Mentions when we talk about security, compliance, PCI, HIPAA, making sure that the systems have both the operational processes and the logging and other areas to be able to bring that forward. Big thing for our organization is being able to integrate them into all kinds of different systems that we have within our company, within large scale other vendors, and partnering things together so we can provide that integration systems to connect in. At one level, that's one of the big things that OpenStack is about. It's a set of abstract connectors that allow you to plug in a storage subsystem from one vendor into a compute farm from a different vendor, or a networking infrastructure from possibly a third. And that is kind of the nature of what you see in many different application uses of OpenStack. And when we're thinking about that, it's really making sure we can have a TCO story, making sure that we're driving down the cost and driving up the effectiveness of running one of these very large infrastructures. But we're not done yet. And this is everything on an open source project is a journey. So just a few things that we're working on, a few things that teams are working on for our current release in the community and the next releases going forward. Improving the lifecycle management, possibly containerizing control planes. A lot of people have some of that, but moving that more into mainstream within the OpenStack community. Continuing to push for scale and agility and across many, many regions, dealing with latency that happens when you're talking about global deployments of an infrastructure. Continuing to move forward on bare metal. So there's a large desire for people who are doing kind of container type development. They say, I just want a whole set of bare metal machines so I can spin up a set of container clusters on those. So I don't really need virtualization, but I do need multi-tenancy and I need my machines so that I can have that kind of hard security. Some work we're doing there collectively. And lastly, working within other third-party systems so we're able to drive the kind of connection into third-party billing systems, third-party auditing and logging systems quite effectively. So I view this as kind of some of what's going on in the next year. These are nice problems to have, and we see these as a continued evolution of the success of the OpenStack community. I want to speak briefly about security. It's been something that's really kind of near and dear to my team's heart. Very beginnings, we started a security team. Some of our very large clients, obviously, this is like the first questions people ask. 3 years ago, I walked someplace in Lower Manhattan, and it's like, talk to me about man-in-the-middle attacks. Talk to me about how you're going to encrypt data storage at rest. Talk to me about how you're going to have make sure that the image I have is the image I ask for. And it was this wonderfully complex list of threat attacks. I took that back and I realized that was such a gift. It was almost a checklist of ways in which people could attack our system. And in doing that, we ended up building a security team and walking through and understanding more deeply how to make something really robust for large-scale deployments across multinational companies. So I wanted to maybe give you some kind of quick facts from one of the private clouds that I've got a lot of familiarity with. This is one of the HPE IT private clouds. Just to give, it's been useful for us to kind of go like, where does it go? Where does it sit? So this specific one is for a region within a sector of our IT organization. It's in a dual site, 6 AZs. We use kind of all of our open source, Cloud Foundry, OpenStack technologies. We use some things inside our organization called Propel and Cloud System Automation. And this has allowed this team within HPE to really kind of move to an agile infrastructure, to move a large number of their thousands of applications onto this infrastructure and to accelerate the innovation that they've had. A lot of their applications have gone from releases, once a month or once every 2 months to many multi-times a day development applications and deployments. So one of the things they found is it just completely reduced the internal bottlenecks that they had within the way they thought about their infrastructure. So now it turns out the infrastructure team that kind of teams up with us, they're looking for how do they continue to make it more effective, more agile, more automated, so that they can spend their time helping people adopt the technology, come on board to it, whether it's come on board to an object store system that holds multiple petabytes worth of objects, and they have to worry about having a complex storage subsystem that's independent of that, to making good use of their container models for the kind of cloud native application development that they're doing. Kind of maybe just to round out, our HPE portfolio is really, we're all based on open source. We completely believe in that, like I said in the very beginning. We've got a set of products and technologies ranging from the use of the OpenStack technology in the carrier grade or telecommunications industry to having a prepackaged hardware, software, private cloud that you can deploy very rapidly in your data center with all the software connected together, to a cloud-native application framework using containers and Cloud Foundry. And of course, all of those are built in within an OpenStack framework to provide the IS system. So that maybe that's a good way to close. And thank you very much for talking to you. I'm here for the next couple of days, so I'm looking forward to having some great conversations with you. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Thanks. Really appreciate it.